This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. As what is the saying? Good things are worth waiting for. Hello and welcome to Season 8, Episode number 11 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2026 Barcelona, don't call it Spanish GP, as I found out over the course of the weekend, GP review show. You've got Andy, and I am once again in the solo wing formation. It's our last time. Cody has, I believe, should be landing any minute now, coming back from Japan, but he's a little jet lagged, and we're going to give him one more night off. Welcome on in. We're glad you're here as always. One thing I just wanted to kind of touch on before we get into the normal business here, and one is a bit of an apology. I know that we're probably getting this out a little later than you guys normally would expect, and or basically we're getting this one out a little bit later. What has happened, as you guys all kind of know, I was up in the north woods of Wisconsin last week, which how I watched the Monaco Grand Prix. We were able to do an actual recording from the north woods of Wisconsin. I had a window of time to get it kind of done, and we were able to do that. What happened when I got home, or the latter part of the week, as it turned out, there were not only one round, but two really, really bad rounds of severe weather that rolled through here, even though I wasn't here to experience it. It did do a number on a lot of the area around here. We had lots of power outages. I didn't get power back in my apartment actually until Saturday as I was coming back. This whole mess started on Wednesday. I got power back for a little bit Wednesday night, and then it went out again. And then on Thursday with the second wave, and then we didn't get basically anything back until Saturday morning. So while I was able to watch the race and everything, when you get back from a week away, there's just a lot of putting your life back together that you had to do. And coupled with that, with all of the recovery from all the storms that happened, my parents' house got rocked pretty good. They are fortunately all okay. The house is actually fortunately okay. There are a lot of other properties around them that were worse off than we were. There was just a lot of extra stuff happening in the first couple of days after getting back. So while I was able to watch the race live and try to do the normal stuff that I tried to do, it was like right after that all ended, we went back into kind of storm recovery mode and all that other stuff. So the idea of trying to put a podcast together, I was kind of forced with one of two things. I could either try to get it out and maybe not put in the effort and the energy that I think a show like this requires, or wait a couple days and feel better about doing it when I could actually sit down and do it. And today was really the first day that I've actually had to be able to work on this, to work on the podcast and actually try to do a recording and try to get it out. So apologies for the lateness of it, but I hope that we're going to make this worth the wait, as it were. So we'll just hop right back in. Where can you find our show? You can find us on X, on Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you're hearing and you enjoy what you're, I don't know if we're going to do a video for this one, but if you like the content that we produce, you can leave us a like on YouTube. That's a huge help. You can click the subscribe button if you want to get notified as to when we do things here on and drop episodes on the channel. If you're also on your favorite podcasting app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we definitely post to those platforms as well. A 5-star review will help us out and help us to come up a little bit better in F1 related search results for content like this. You can email the show outlapf1@gmail.com. That'll get your thoughts directly to us. You can also send us a DM on X or any of the other social media platforms that we post to. Thank you so much for Outlap F1 Nation, who continue to support the show, whether we're on time or not. Thank you so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weber, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, who was texting me about all the weather, and I appreciate all of that, Kevin. For a heads up for all of that going on last week. Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Jonathan Scott, Rachel Fleming, Dave Doherty, and Brandon Bowler for supporting the show. If you'd like to do that, we have a new link. It's called You Can Buy Us a Set of Coffee. We are into the European season in Formula One. We do have to keep some odd waking hours. I can attest to that, especially for this weekend. So you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/outlapf1. You can leave if you'd like to donate to the show. We would definitely be grateful. Cody and I will be definitely grateful for any contributions that you'd like to give. With all that said, let's get into some of the headlines of the day. And mine is actually really simple. And I'm going to do a little bit of spike in the ball, not a lot. I don't like to do a lot of this, but I've been saying since the move happened that Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari was all about what happens in 2026. It was never about any of the results for 2025. And even when a lot of fans questioned the move and a lot of fans questioned whether or not he had anything left in the tank, you can go back and listen to the prior episodes. I've been consistent about this point. It was always been about Lewis and the 2026 rules. And this weekend, I was proven correct as Lewis Hamilton stops the Mercedes win streak in its tracks with a vintage performance. You just have to say it clear as day there. We'll get into some of the detail of how he managed to do it, but win number 106 for the 7-time world champion confirms that it's all been about 2026 from the beginning of this move. So that's the headline of the day. Before we get into the race itself, we will rewind back a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about the qualifying. I was able to watch it as I was packing, so this isn't going to be necessarily as detailed because I was actually quite distracted. I was in and out and trying to watch it, and then Leclerc hits the wall, and of course that delayed everything, and I'm like really actually trying to get out of here. So I was trying to keep the TV on before the landlord at the place we were standing would show up and say, "Lee, I got to get out." So we were kind of up against it, but that qualifying saw P22 and P21. Oh my Lord, the Aston Martin pain. Boy, does that continue. Fernando Alonso is not a happy bunny. The time bomb, I believe, is bursting kind of in real time. He is no longer being patient. He is no longer talking nice things about the potential of the program. He's not a happy bunny, and this performance in a home race, I could understand that. P22 ends up almost 4 seconds off the pace, legitimately. P21 is his teammate, Lance Stroll, also not much better, only a 10th better. P20 was Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac. P19, Sergio Perez in the other Cadillac, but well ahead of the Aston Martins for sure. P18 was Alex Albon in the Williams. P17 was Esteban Ocon in the Haas. P16 was Carlos Sainz. He did make it to Q2, but went no further. P15 was Ollie Behrman in the Haas. P14 was Pierre Gasly. P13 was Franco Colapinto. P12, Gabby Bortoleto. P11 was Arvid Lindblad. Advancing through to Q3, Charles Leclerc did not post, or he did not post a time. As it turned out, he found the wall on his first flying lap and did not set a time. Therefore, he was relegated to P10. That meant P9, Nico Hulkenberg, who makes his first Q3 appearance of the season, gets promoted to P9. P8 was Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull. P7, bit of a disappointment for the Papaya team here. Oscar Piastri only manages to come home in 7th in the qualifying. P6 was Isaac Hadjar. P5 was Max Verstappen. P4 was Lando Norris. P3 was Kimi Antonelli, so the Kimi Antonelli pole streak ends here. P2 was Lewis Hamilton, who gave it one hell of a lap there at the end, but it was not enough. George Russell, who needed at this point to have a good showing, gets it done, a 1:14.679 the lap time. Very, very tight in Q3. Comes down to the final runs. From my personal perspective, I think Lando's first flying lap got a little compromised because when Leclerc hit the wall, he was just about to set a lap time that may have potentially, he thought, maybe given him P3 on the grid, but that was as far as he was going to be able to go. But in the end, the cars that have developed, I think the best so far have been the Mercedes and now the Ferraris, who brought some big upgrades here. And Lewis was on it, even throughout all of the sessions in qualifying. Very scrappy qualifying, I think, for the two McLarens. Piastri not really anywhere near. Lando able to turn it on kind of at the end, but not enough to really be a challenge to the other to the top three there. So Russell, Hamilton, and Antonelli were your top three. Other notable things: Isaac Hadjar being able to qualify right on the back of Max Verstappen is, I think, significant for him. You've got Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull, representing kind of the best of the rest here, and Nico Hulkenberg showing well, getting into Q3 for the first time this season as well. We already kind of talked about disappointments. The Astons. Oh man, the Astons. Yeah, they're able to finish races, and that's, well, sometimes, and that's really about all I can say, because the car just needs help everywhere. It is not an easy car to drive. Neither driver is happy. It's just going to be a very long slog of a year for Aston Martin this season. It's just kind of the writing that you see kind of here on the walls. Other struggles, surprising that the two Williams struggled as bad as they did here. But maybe we shouldn't be surprised anymore. The other ones, there was surprising struggle, and we will have to talk about the plight of one Pierre Gasly. When we get into our second segment and we redo the points, I will talk more about what has happened to Pierre Gasly and the right of review and the appeal, and now the appeals of the appeal and the giant mess the FIA has made out of all of this. We will get into that in our second segment. But Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto not making Q3 after being really the best midfield team over the course of the last couple of races. They were definitely struggling in qualifying for sure. All right. Well, we will turn our leaf over and head into the Sunday race. We will start, as we always have to do, with our back markers. And yeah, the pain, the tale of pain continues for the Aston Martins. 5 laps is all Lance Stroll was able to do before his car said no more. Also not finishing, Valtteri Bottas in the Cadillac, Nico Hulkenberg in the Audi, Fernando Alonso in the other Aston Martin. Alex Albon technically is classified, but finished 11 laps down. Ollie Behrman in the Haas did not finish. Kimi Antonelli, we will talk about what happened to him. Charles Leclerc had a late mechanical as well. So the championship leader, let's just pick up the headline right here. Championship leader in the back markers for the first time. He had been kind of the only one that really hadn't had the unreliability bug bite him. It bit him here. He had starting third on the grid. He had very strategically, I think, finally made it up to P2. He had gotten past George Russell with some nice, I think, moves for racing. Maybe sustained a little bit of damage to his front wing at some point during the race. But after clearing Russell and opening up what it was, I think, about a 1.5 second gap on him, suddenly pulls over, and it is yet another Mercedes battery failure. That is seemingly the only chink in their armor seems to be electronics and the battery, because, I mean, if you're a McLaren fan, we know all of the trials and tribulations of Lando Norris and the Mercedes battery problems. Oscar Piastri's been bitten by Mercedes battery problems. George Russell was bitten in Canada by Mercedes battery problems. And now the championship leader may just be the pendulum swinging back a bit. Math tends to do that. So he does not finish the race and ends up in the back markers. No points for him. A non-score after winning the last 5 races in a row is a bit of a slam down to a guy who even in defeat, I think, impressed more and more as he was basically taking the fight to his teammate for sure. That said, when we get to the points, the math on this, because of who won the race, it's not quite an open championship yet. It's not within one race, but some of the cushion that he had very quickly went away. So if you are one who wants to see the championship go all the way to the end, this was it feels weird to say it, but this was almost something that almost you had to have happen. He needed to have a non-scoring race, probably due to some sort of a mechanical, in order to let someone else back into the championship. So the fight for the drivers is a little bit more on because of that. But other so we talked about Antonelli, we talked about Leclerc. Sergio Perez is your first classified finisher on the day in P14, 3 laps down to the lead. Esteban Ocon is your other classified finisher here, what we would call in the back markers, 2 laps down to the lead in the Haas. Midfield. Let's talk a little bit about the midfield before we talk about the podium and the overall race result. P12 was Carlos Sainz. P11 was Gabby Bortoleto. Your points finishers start with P10, Franco Colapinto. P9 was Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bulls. P8 was Liam Lawson in the other Racing Bull. P7 was Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, undoing the qualifying issue and reestablishing as kind of the best of the rest here. P6 is Isaac Hadjar. P5, probably a flattering result, if I'm being honest, for Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. P4 was Max Verstappen. A solid result, good points, but still 40 seconds off the lead. So big things in the midfield here. I would say Pierre Gasly doing a good job of coming back from the initial qualifying. He did get some help. He got some team order help. The Franco Colapinto at one point was definitely questioning, but he did abide by it. It was not a repeat of what happened in Austin last year between the two of them. Isaac Hadjar, who had a awful start to the race, who dropped from his qualifying position of P6, he drops all the way to P14 at the end of lap 1. His start was really not well done at all. He dropped immediately right off the line, almost stalled the car, but manages to then go to work, do some overtakes, did the pit stops, grinds out, in my opinion, a P6. Yes, he finishes a lap down, but he is only 1 position adrift of his teammate, or 2 positions adrift of his teammate at the end of the day. So a better showing for him. Obviously, these are both flattered, I think, a bit by the Antonelli retirement and the Leclerc retirement. Charles Leclerc retiring. We didn't necessarily get a chance to talk about this in the back markers due to a power steering failure on the same lap that Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes battery decided to say no more. So 2 big hitters, I think, and what we would normally call the big hitters, dropping down and out of the points. So that promotes some other people into the points. Colapinto took advantage, and the 2 Racing Bulls took advantage as well. It definitely flatters the result, in my opinion, for Oscar Piastri. I think McLaren as a team, we're definitely hoping for better results, at least on pure pace. A P5 for Oscar Piastri is definitely a better result than I think he deserved. He was struggling on pace most of the day. He was barely hanging on to the top 7 or 8, as it were. At one point, he was solidly in 7th. He was getting passed by Leclerc, who was recovering from his qualifying effort early on in the race. Just a very tough day, I think, at the office for him. But because of the other retirements, I think the end result probably, like I said, flatters them a little bit here. You look at Max Verstappen's race. I think you got to be happy with a solid P4, but not really able to bring the fight anywhere to the podium. Again, probably a little flattered by the 2 retirements there. Your podium finishers at the end of the day: P3, Lando Norris is the benefactor of the Kimi Antonelli retirement. P2, George Russell, definitely the benefactor after being passed by his teammate, would have been relegated to P3 on the podium, but manages to come back and claim P2 on the day. Gets him back into the drivers' championship fight a little bit as he scores 18 points versus his teammate who scores none. But the guy of the day, the driver of the day, I could just hand this award out right now. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari with an absolute vintage performance this weekend. You could tell just being even a 10th off in qualifying that he was on it early. He took the strategy to the Mercedes early by, number 1, starting on the softer tire, and then number 2, getting off that soft tire relatively early in the window, which forced both Mercedes cars to, I think, cover him off a lot earlier than they intended. There was a radio message from George Russell saying, "Hey, I was managing the tires. Why are you boxing me now?" type of thing. So I don't know if that was a bit of analysis paralysis by Mercedes or whether it ended up being just the tires were going to give themselves out anyway because it was very hot. There really wasn't a big delta between the medium and the soft tire in terms of overall tire life. So whether you started on the medium or the soft, it seemed like you were kind of in the same window anyway. And that's kind of what the Mercedes engineers were trying to reassure George that, hey, we probably would have boxed on this lap or really close to it anyway. However, that having now been said, the nice, easy managing of pace that George Russell may have had went away because one of the keys that enables Lewis Hamilton to take this victory were the outlaps on the pit stops. He committed to a 3-stop strategy. He did a 3-stop strategy. But I will tell you, after looking at the timing on every one of his outlaps were absolutely amazing, especially in the second sector. I think on the first stop, even though there's a tire offset, he was 1.4 seconds faster in the middle sector than George Russell was. And so that forces Mercedes to now have to react. They had no choice. I think if they had sat down and planned the race out from the beginning, they probably would have wanted to extend. That card got taken off the table by the Hamilton pace. So he was always going to be a contender for the win. He gets further helped, and it just kind of worked out that way, kind of a la Lando Norris in Miami a couple of years ago, from the Fernando Alonso retirement. Ironically enough, the Fernando Alonso retirement causes a virtual safety car, even though Lewis was originally past the pit lane entrance on that virtual safety car. He gets to come all the way around and still make the cheap pit stop, being effectively 20 seconds up on everybody else. He comes out, he is in P1, he was clear, and now even on the pit strategy, to the point where, Ferrari car in clean air, my guess is he wins this race without it, but the safety car was the cherry on the pie, or the cherry on the sundae that Lewis Hamilton needed to get his first win in the Ferrari. So a absolute, like I said before, vintage performance for Lewis Hamilton. It has always been about the 2026 regulation change. Yeah, it wasn't always, Ferrari haven't designed the best engine necessarily. They're going to get some help with that. They have designed one of the more efficient chassis, and that played a big role in this race. He was getting through the corners a lot better than the Mercedes. And the other thing that happened was, because it was so hot, Mercedes car in warm weather is still not as good as Mercedes car in cool weather. That's just, there's enough data out there now to support that. These first few races where Antonelli and Russell were 1-2ing the field, or Antonelli winning by, large margins, were in cooler temperatures. You look at the first few races and all the temperatures were relatively cool until now. And now it's interesting that they weren't necessarily as dominant. You also got to give Ferrari mechanics and Ferrari engineers some credit for they brought 8 upgrades for this race. So they have emptied their update tank for the time being, and it's working for them. If Leclerc doesn't find the wall, be very interesting to see where he would have qualified in the overall order. And would it have been maybe Mercedes Ferrari type of situation? So unfortunately, we're going to have to wait another couple of weeks to find that out, to see if that bears fruit. But yeah, just I think overall a vintage performance from Lewis Hamilton. He took the strategy fight to the Mercedes team. Mercedes team was not up for it. And then they did a whole bunch of infighting amongst themselves, because Antonelli and Russell went at it more than a couple times. And that slows both of those cars down to the point where, oh, by the way, Lewis didn't really have a whole lot of on-track competition in this race. He could focus on the lap times. He could focus on the break points. He could focus on making good time. He comes on the radio and basically says, what lap times do I need to do in order to achieve what we want to achieve? And that was winning the race. Yes, he totally got helped out by the safety car, but in the end, I don't think it matters. I think the only thing we got kind of taken away from us was maybe the fight against Russell or the fight against Antonelli for the win. As it turned out, after the race, Kimi Antonelli was then assessed a 5-second penalty for track limits, because Lando Norris was on the radio saying it looked like he definitely had gone over the line. Yes, he retired, but then they reviewed the footage. And so we don't have a podium oddity like we did in Monaco. We just have kind of the straightforward result here. Other shout outs in terms of, I think good races, people who had good races. Hadjar had a better race after the start. He definitely clawed back and got a result out of it here. Again, I think the law firm of Lindblad and Lawson for the Racing Bull team, solid in the midfield as well. You got to give it to the Alpines too. They are now, I think, establishing themselves as that midfield team that is definitely solid within that midfield battle, and they're doing a lot of the right things. They now have, I think, a big title sponsorship with Gucci, so they will be very fashionable. And as BWT comes off as the title sponsor, Gucci will come on for them in the future. But yeah, I mean, I think a vintage win for Lewis Hamilton would be what I would take away from this race. As for my own team, from the McLarens, I think the result is flattering. Lando was definitely on more pace than Oscar. I think Lando was able to fire up his tires a little bit better. There are laps where the McLaren car looked really good on pace, and then there were some laps where it would just be like, well, what the hell happened there? Odd slips, odd lockups. Just not a smooth looking car, I think, for them at the moment. And something that I think they realize that they need to work on. I don't think it was clear that Monaco was definitely a one-off. This was a little bit more closer to form. They are going to some tracks that have favored them recently. They tend to go pretty well in Austria. Spa is another story. And then when the British Grand Prix happens, they've always tended to go pretty well there too. So my verdict is definitely one of incomplete because I don't know where really they are. I think they're the third fastest car. That's probably where they are. But there's a bit of a gap between them and the Ferraris. The Ferraris are pulling away. Their chassis is just super efficient, and they are now probably the number one protagonists to the Mercedes. And with that, now comes Kimi Antonelli has a 7-time world champion looking over his shoulder, and he sees a 7-time world champion in P2 in the drivers with a lot of rounds to go. So what was looking like the Kimi Antonelli victory parade, maybe not so much, especially after the DNF here. So I thought it was, for Spain, one of the better, more interesting races. Spain is generally a lot of strategy, not a ton of overtaking. Always works better as a qualifying and test track than it does necessarily a race venue. But I thought one of the more entertaining Spanish Grand Prix. I was enthralled all the way to the end, so I think I was happy with it. Not Spanish Grand Prix, Barcelona-Catalunya GP. The Spanish Grand Prix gets to take place on the street course later this year in Madrid. This is actually Catalunya's, or the Circuit Eng, their last race. They will not be on the calendar next year. They will come back in 28 as they start the flip-flop, I think, with Spa. So yeah, I thought overall a pretty entertaining race. As a McLaren fan, I'm happy with the result. You can't not be happy with it, given especially how they qualified. But I think the reality is hitting home that they are not getting on top of the car as much as they need to. There's still some development work that definitely needs to happen. And I'm sure that they're on it. But there's still a gap to go. If you're George Russell, you should feel like you kind of got away with one. Could you have won the race? I would have loved to have seen what would have happened had George Russell stayed out longer and extended that first stint. Maybe it may have been a disaster. But I would have liked to have seen what he could have done if he had the higher ground on the strategy. But in the end, I think he didn't, and Mercedes didn't, because of the raw pace that Lewis Hamilton had in his car, especially on those outlaps. Those outlaps were the key to this race for sure. All right. Well, that is the Barcelona-Catalunya GP. We've gone through it. We'll take a quick break. I'll come back. I'll do a little bit of a news segment where I will update you guys on what's happened with the Monaco GP and the Pierre Gasly appeal and the lovely mess that the FIA has now made itself into. We'll talk about where the points are today. Those may yet still be changing, given the appeal and the appeal of the appeal. And oh Lord, what a lovely mess. We'll then open it up to your thoughts on the race in the fan email segment. We've got our great contributors here as always. I'll react to that. I'll hand out some awards. I'll say a little bit about something that made me frustrated just over the course of the weekend that I think we could fix. And then we'll start to preview the Austria GP because the European season is upon us. These races are coming at us thick and fast. We will get into all that in just a little bit. Come on back. You will not want to miss it.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back on in. This is season 8, episode number 11 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2026 Barcelona GP review show. I hope I've said that right in the native tongue. You've got Andy. I am once again flying solo. It should be the last time, hopefully, I'm flying solo, as Cody has returned from Japan, or is in the process of returning from Japan as I'm recording this. And I also, just before we actually get into the normal F1 business, I wanted to say a note of thanks to everyone who's commented on the last couple of episodes. A lot of it's actually been very supportive, and personally, I thank you guys for that. It lets me know that you do like what you're hearing, and you enjoy what we do over here. And even some of the constructive criticism has been actually very constructive, and it's been helpful, and it's appreciated. So good or bad. Like I said, I when we ask for comments, it's not necessarily always just to be flattering. It's what can we do better? How can we improve as a show? Trying to navigate this, especially kind of being on my own, has been an experience. It's hard. You sit in a room and you basically talk to yourself for an hour, and I'm trying to figure out how to make it entertaining and fun, and trying to remember everything that happened in a race like this that actually had quite a bit that happened in it. So thank you guys for the support, and thank you guys for the comments. They're actually very much appreciated. All right, before we get into the points, we have to do some addendums because the FIA did something that, quite frankly, I was not expecting. We did mention, I may have mentioned in the Monaco GP review, that Pierre Gasly had appealed his 2 5-second penalties for speeding in the pit lane. And they submitted a whole bunch of evidence. They had a hearing on, I think it was Thursday or Friday, and the initial decision was that they had provided what the FIA deemed as new evidence in the Pierre Gasly penalties specifically. And my initial thought on that was, well, okay, that's great, but if they reinstate the Pierre Gasly result, which would put him back on the podium, I would be very surprised if they were going to do that, because then what do you do? Because certain drivers serve their penalties. There was a slew of 5-second speeding penalties, and we all said, I know I said it in the Monaco GP review, that something had to have been wrong with the calibration system. You don't see that many results. That is a data point outlier. It just sticks out. You wouldn't expect to see 6 different drivers get pinged for all pit lane speeding penalties. Something was wrong with either the limiters, the measuring system, or something. And what the FIA determined is that something was wrong with how it was being read, because circumstances had changed, and they had changed some slight configurations of where they placed the pit lane reader of the speed. And if you actually took time over distance, it was proven that Pierre Gasly and probably everybody else who got a speeding penalty really wasn't speeding. And so the FIA actually agrees and overturns the 2 penalties that were assessed, which for Pierre Gasly is great. So he comes back up now onto the podium. You move him up. You move everybody else down. It does mean that Isaac Hadjar doesn't get to keep his trophy, at least at this point. But what it does is now this opens up an entire can of worms, because George Russell didn't serve his 5-second penalty for a pit lane speeding violation, yet got an additional penalty for not serving the 5-second penalty. Oscar Piastri serves his 5-second penalty and gets demoted for no fault of his own, even maybe after being promoted when maybe he shouldn't have been. So we have some very disgruntled teams out there. And then the other thing that this does is, I'm sorry, if I'm a driver and I get a 5-second pit lane speeding penalty, you are now telling everybody, maybe there's a problem with the measuring system. You best not serve it. Let them ding you and then take your chances on appeal. So now we've had Mercedes appeal the right, or do a right of review on the Gasly appeal. I think it came out earlier today or maybe yesterday that McLaren is now joining Mercedes in the appeal of the appeal. And we're going to have a mess until this gets all sorted out. So we may find out the final results of the 2026 Monaco Grand Prix sometime, I don't know, maybe around Christmas? Maybe? I don't think it's... on the McLaren side, it's definitely not about the points. I mean, it cost Oscar Piastri 2 points, but where he was annoyed with was, you told me I was speeding, you gave me a penalty, I did the right thing, I served the penalty, why should that then cost me? When Gasly, who gets the same infraction that I did, didn't serve it, gets another one because of the red flag and how that all panned out, and he was able to change his tire without technically making a pit stop, but gets 2 infractions for the same thing, and then gets overturned on appeal. So this is just a mess that the FIA have created of themselves. I mean, in one sense, I guess I was interested to see that they were going to be stand up enough to take responsibility that it was their fault. But what I would have thought they would have said was, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have, but because it affected so many other drivers, because this result affects so many other things, that we can't necessarily change the result because of it. But they didn't do that. They changed the Gasly result, and now the zipper is basically now it's ripped off, and it's like undoing a zipper. We go right down the rabbit hole of now we have appeal after an appeal of an appeal. 2 appeals of a successful appeal. So these are your points as of this round, which is one round after all of that, but this has those results updated as to where they are now, with Pierre Gasly on the podium and Oscar Piastri down, I think, to P5 as opposed to P4. Isaac Hadjar then goes down. So it affects, I think it went from everybody down to 6th. And Monaco got, affected by this one way or another. So how this is going to play out, I'm not exactly sure. I don't know that it just gets harder. The longer you go on something like this, the harder it is to say what is fair. Somebody's not going to get what they want out of this. And it may just be that George and Mercedes lose on this one. And I don't think Piastri is going to get back any points, which all just kind of sucks, because what else can you do? How much can you manipulate the result to try to make it what it should have been had this stupid system been working right? And the real answer should be, it's Formula One. If we can't measure time and distance in 2026, what are we doing? That's the end of where I am with this. So we'll follow it. We'll see what happens with it. Stay tuned. Like I said, I think we may learn the final result of the Monaco Grand Prix sometime around Christmas. We'll have to see if George can get back in the championship fight. This now becomes a far bigger issue if he can bridge the gap a little bit. But we shall see. So put this thing on the back burner, and here we go. So your top 10 drivers after the Barcelona-Catalunya GP are as follows. Kimi Antonelli does not score any points. He remains Still has a pretty good point total for the season, though, 156 points on the year. P2 is now Lewis Hamilton. He solidifies his P2 position with the win here, up to 115 points. That is a 41-point delta. Certainly looks a lot better than a 66-point delta. We shall see if he can take another dent, if you have a repeat of this, if the Mercedes battery in the higher elevations of Austria has a problem, and that Ferrari chassis can do something, we could be headed to the British Grand Prix with Lewis Hamilton maybe on a streak and going into a home race. Championship may not be dead yet. Lewis Hamilton, P2, 115 points for him. P3 is George Russell, up to 106 points with the P2 result here. P4 is Charles Leclerc. He is on 75 points despite the DNF here. P5 is Lando Norris, the benefactor of, I think, the Antonelli retirement and the Leclerc retirement. He comes up one position in the points to P5, and only 2 points behind Leclerc. Now it's 73 points. P6 is Oscar Piastri. Like I said, a flattering result for him on a P5 today. Comes home and is up now to 68 points on the season. P7 is Max Verstappen. He climbs up to 55 points. P8, Pierre Gasly, now with the podium restored for him. Those are big points for him. Up now to 41 points. P9 is Isaac Hadjar. He comes up now to 34 points. P10 is now Liam Lawson, the last in the Racing Bull, scoring 28 points so far this season. Your constructor standings are as follows. P1 is Mercedes. They are way out in front. They are on 262 points on the year. P2 is now Ferrari, up to 190 points on the season. P3, McLaren, a much better result for them than the last couple of rounds out. Both cars finished and both cars scored points. 141 points for them on the season, but it's looking like they're going to slot into P3 unless they can bring some major upgrades to that car. P4, Red Bull Racing, they check in with 89 points. P5 is Alpine, up to 57 points on the season. P6 is Racing Bulls, 41 points for them. P7 is Haas, no points for them here, but so they remain on 21 points. P8 is Williams, also remaining on 11 points. P9, Audi with 2. P10, the Aston Martins. The Fernando Alonso gets points in Monaco, gives them the one solitary point on the season. That puts them one ahead of Cadillac, who, as of right now, has yet to score any points and reside in last place in the Constructors. All right, so you have heard my take on the Barcelona-Catalunya GP and Lewis Hamilton win number 106. What did you guys have to say about this race? We start with Rachel Fleming, who said, well, it was an okay race. I suppose I will have to say well done to Lewis. I don't like the fact that he has brought that family to F1 this season, but he did win well. The upgrades worked well for Ferrari. I am gutted for George. I thought this was going to be a nice and boring win for him, but no. At least Lando finished the race. It's a start, but Kimi retired, so George gained a lot of points, so it's something at least. Apart from that, it wasn't a brilliant race. Well, for me anyway. Some F1 fans aren't sorry that we are losing this track, and I have mixed feelings about it. Audi watch, the engine fails for Hulk, and Bort was nowhere meh. Alonso watch, pit lane start and overtook Bottas, promoting Bottas to retire as something must be broken for the Aston to overtake him. Anyway, Alonso pulling off to retire gave Lewis the win. Thanks for that, Fernando. Perez watch, he finished ahead of Albon. Yes, Albon had to get his camera fixed on his car, so it's progress. Plus, he was faster than the Astons anyway, so it's good news at least. Yeah, Rachel brings up some really interesting points. I had forgotten or neglected to mention Nico Hülkenberg, one of the more odd retirements that I have heard. I've heard some odd ones. I've heard of engines going out for no reason. I've never heard of a rock getting kicked up as part of debris and hitting the kill switch. a rock gets kicked up and hits debris and hits Nico Hulkenberg's kill switch, emergency kill switch, that's on there for safety reasons, and that shut the car off and meant that Nico Hulkenberg could not finish the race. So that was like, if it not only rains, but it pours sometimes in this sport, man. It's crazy. So yeah, the Hulk watch was not necessarily a very good one. Yeah, Bortoletto, Audi, I think in general struggling here. A lot of unreliability. The hot temperatures, I think, really did some things to throw some drivers out, or to throw some cars and some chassis out for sure. And I think Audi was one of the sufferers there. Definitely the Astons, definitely the Cadillacs. Their pace was really not anywhere near where it should have been, or where it could have been, where it's been in some of the more favorable weather tracks. Yeah, I get why you would be gutted for George. I would have, like I said before, I would have liked to have seen what he could have done had he stayed out after Lewis pits the first time. If he just ignored it and said, okay, and I'm going to raise my pace, I'm going to try to absorb the undercut as best I can, and we're just going to run our race, and that's going to be the end of it. That's not what happened. Now, it also could have come down to the fact that the medium versus the soft tire, there really didn't appear to be a whole lot of difference between the two of them, either in pace or in degradation. And maybe that also has something to do with the hot temperatures as well. But the fact that Lewis nailed those outlaps put the pressure on the Mercedes. They had to react to it. And that's kind of what brings George back into play. Definitely brought Kimi Antonelli back into play, at least apart from George. But George, like I said, wiggles off the hook a little bit because he gains points on Antonelli, something he absolutely had to do, and with Antonelli's retirement. So they're kind of one for one. Those things in sport generally tend to even out, and I think that that's kind of what you saw there. So I think Rachel's point is spot on. So something, at least. And Lando finished the race. Thank God. I saw a stat that was just damning, where Kimi Antonelli had led more laps than Lando Norris had even completed this season. Yeah, that's just a very damning stat. So we are where we are. Yeah, just kind of one of those odd things there. Yeah, the Alonso, it's kind of ironic that the Alonso retirement ensured the Lewis Hamilton win. I personally think Lewis had enough pace to probably win the race without the virtual safety car, but the virtual safety car definitely sealed the fate there and allowed Lewis to have the gap that he had. I think that gap flatters. Just like I said, the retirements flatter some certain drivers. The 19-second gap, as a George Russell fan, you should not feel weird or odd about the 19-second gap there, Rachel. I don't think that is necessarily indicative. That was definitely helped by the virtual safety car coming out when it did. All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Rachel. As always, good points across the board there. Dave Doherty has chimed in and said, hi, team. I just want to say this race was absolutely brilliant. Hamilton is back in his winning ways as my boy, Kimi Antonelli. I feel for him, but I know he will play the team game as Mercedes had done that this perfect weekend by letting George Russell win. But McLaren and Ferrari, I was surprised, although I was in Yorkshire for my vacation weekend break. I'm glad I could balance F1 in my vacation. It wasn't easy, but I did pretty good. To be a real F1 fan, I'm happy with F1 at the moment. Dave, I feel you trying to manage watching Formula One in odd places. And I will say one thing. We haven't really commented a lot on Apple TV very much, other than I was very pleasantly surprised how well Apple TV on my mobile internet, which only gets the certain amount of bandwidth that the cell tower next to the property that I stay at has, and it's not a 5G tower, functioned a lot better this year. I was able to watch the race last year from up there, but it was a task. It was a task and a half. On the Apple TV, on the smart TV that was within the cabin that we were staying at, it worked very well. Um, Only went out, I think, maybe once. I only had to reset the connection maybe once throughout the whole race. Was able to still have my timing screen. Didn't try to do that with two onboards because I figured I just would have overloaded something. So I kind of just did a modified version of the setup. I couldn't do as much onboard watching as I normally would have done. Um, but I was able to watch the main broadcast. The Sky broadcast on Apple TV was just fine, functioned fine. So that was definitely a plus for me. And I think if, as an American F1 podcast, I think that's something that needs to be said. So even in remote places, as long as you can get signal, internet signal, Apple TV will work. And it works even better than the native F1 TV app. To be honest with you, that thing would cut in and out a lot, even on some of my smaller devices. Like if I was trying to watch F2 or F3, I was watching on my iPad at some odd times in the middle of the dark and 4 a.m. and I'm watching the Formula 2 race. And Colton Herta should have got a podium, dang it, especially in the sprint race, but he didn't. That having been said, yeah, so I get the trying to balance F1 and vacation type of situation, Dave, and you're an F1 fan regardless of where you are in the world, man. You got nothing to prove to me for sure. As to your points, I don't know that Kimi Antonelli was going to play a team game. He seemed pretty spry, and he seemed like he had not only caught but passed George Russell in a way that wasn't exactly the kind of, if you're a Mercedes fan, I think put your heart in your mouth a little bit, because they were going to get a P2 and a P3. It's just a question of which driver was P2 and which driver was P3. And Kimi pushing the issue did kind of put that result at risk. Now, you can't predict that after the pass and 2 laps later or a lap and a half later that the battery's going to just conk out on you, but he definitely took a risk. I think it was more than justified. I think if I was Kimi Antonelli, I would have done the same thing, because if both Mercedes car wrecks, it's one less round in the championship and you're that closer to the drivers. So I'd have done the same thing. That said, I don't know that I could agree that Kimi was playing a team game there. He certainly wasn't going to let George Russell win. He was not. He had passed him. The car just died. With McLaren, I was surprised that they weren't quite as good as I thought they would be, especially given how this track kind of mirrored Miami and some of the flowy corners, and it was an energy more rich track. I was hoping that they would respond better. So I was a little disappointed in that. I don't really know. It just seems like it's kind of all over the place with the car. Like, there are moments when that car can look really good. They're just not enough of them to get a better result. I don't think at any point, other than Kimi Antonelli eventually getting the 5-second penalty that he got, that Lando Norris had anything on pace for him. The only hope he would have gotten is if he had managed to pull an undercut off. They tried it a couple times. He got within, I think, 0.4 on the last pit stop, but Antonelli was able to hold it off, and that was kind of all she wrote there. So that the chassis and how it gets through the corners and how it treats its tires and all that, it's just not as efficient as last year. And I think it's because they've had to, they couldn't really, they said they tried to dedicate as much time as they could to 2026. They were in a position of having to fight to the end just to win in 2025, as it was. So, and that was some of their own doing. So they've kind of put themselves into this odd spot where they're good. They're not awful. This isn't like 2009 McLaren that was nowhere, or 2014 McLaren that was nowhere in the first year of a rule set. They've definitely done a better job than the last two big major rule changes have done. But they're not where they want to be. Lando Norris clearly wants to win races and try to defend his championship. I don't know if that's possible. He's 80 some points down. It's a lot. He'd have to start winning, and Mercedes would really have to start losing for that to really come to fruition. And the math just doesn't look good for him from a driver's championship perspective. Like, could he still have a respectable finish in the driver's standings? Yeah, he probably could make it to third if they really turned on the form. But I think that's a bit of a stretch at this point, given where the car is. Ferrari, you have to be impressed. Yes, they were down on overall power. They knew that. Yes, the overall start advantage that they had at the beginning of the season seems to have been negated by both the Mercedes and the McLarens. Got to give both of those teams credit for stepping that program up once they realized that it didn't really matter whether Ferraris qualified. They were going to get out in front and try to hold it off. But what the Ferraris have done is they brought a rash of updates that have made what was probably already the most efficient chassis on the grid that much more so efficient. And they get through the corners really, really freaking good. And that enables them to set up passing opportunities and all that other good stuff. So, yeah, I think surprised is a good way to describe it. I did not expect them to be as good as they were here. And they were as good. I like I said in the first segment, I would have liked to have seen where Leclerc would have qualified without finding the wall like he did, because it would have been interesting to see where the actual pecking order is. Was it Lewis with a great lap, or is that Ferrari car just that dang good that they can be right in the fight now, at least in qualifying, and now in the race pace if the Mercedes falter a little bit. So I don't know that it's going to be quite smooth sailing now for the Mercedes. They definitely have what I think is a legit opponent for the rest of these races, at least for the next few, until they can bring a rash updates themselves and maybe reestablish the gap. I think you're going to see Mercedes and Ferrari going at it in the next few rounds for sure. All right. Next contributor is Mr. Formula. Thank you very much, Mr. Formula. And he chimes in and says, I know I always find the negative things to talk about, but damn it, I'm not happy with the state of the sport. Every stinking race, we have 4 to 6 mechanical failures biting anyone and everyone. I'm so irritated and deflated. This is not a great product any longer. I hope this turns around soon. It's nice to see Lewis have success again, though. That kind of saved the day a bit. Do you think Charles is going to be able to take control back of that team? He seems very defeated. And he comes back a couple hours later and says, I've had some time to reflect. I'm definitely being too negative. Forgive me. You're forgiven automatically. But I understand the frustration. And we modern fans in the last 5 years have been ridiculously spoiled because we've had consistent engine regs that have not changed. Only developments that all of these manufacturers could make on the engine side have been reliability updates. And because that's where they spent all their research and development budgets to do, they created engines that really did 2 things. 1, they ran fine on reliability terms, and 2, they didn't even run out of power. So when you do the strategic engine change, you didn't necessarily gain a whole lot. Now, Max Verstappen maybe in Brazil is a exception to that rule, but I think that's more Max's brilliance than it was necessarily what the engine was doing. Go back before this period of engine homologation and no changes, and you do always see a rash of DNFs. Especially go back to the first years of the turbo hybrid era. The first few races, my God, in 2014, it was a graveyard. You had cars not able to make the formation lap before things would conk out. That first test, if you did 30 laps in a day, the first shakedown, doing 30 laps in a day was an achievement. Now, if you do a test day and you only record 30 laps, they're all looking at you like, what the hell happened to your car? So it's a little bit of kind of history repeats itself. We are in the first year of a new regulation. The learning curve is vertical. And I agree with you that I don't like watching talented drivers struggle or not even get a shot to compete or show what they can do or show what their cars can do because of a part that they don't have any control over. Kimi Antonelli had no control over that Mercedes battery going, boop, that's it, we're done, conk out, good night. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri in China had nothing to do with their respective batteries for different problems, saying, sorry, thanks for lining up on a Sunday, but we're not going anywhere in China. Fernando Alonso isn't doing anything other than trying to drive whatever that I forget what Rachel calls it, the ice cream truck or whatever she calls it, of the Aston Martins around. And that engine keeps failing and having other different issues. The only one who kind of gets a pass on this is really Nico Hulkenberg, because that's just a freaky thing. I mean, but even that is just a freaky thing. So we've had issues before with technology, and what it comes down to is, what are you choosing to use Formula One for? If you're of the view that Formula One ought to be just the best entertainment, then what we had before was probably what you'd want, because the engines were reliable, the drivers were finishing races, and it came down to execution a lot more on race day than necessarily luck. If you're using Formula One as a test bank to evaluate new potential road-relevant technology in the future, which is part of the DNA of this sport, you're going to have reliability issues throughout because you're pushing the limit of technological development. Now, have we created a bit of a Frankenstein monster here? I think that's fair with these engine rules and these engine regs. Have they done some things to mitigate it? Yes. The one thing it's not going to mitigate, no matter what they do, is this reliability, and that's just part of the learning curve. When we went to the hybrids in 2014, we had a ton of reliability issues that year over year got better. When we homologated the engines and we had our split of ICE versus energy that we had in the last era, we made those engines so good that they didn't, and the batteries were not being taxed enough to where that they were breaking. You will find, if we can get out of this 2026 year, I think next year's reliability will get better. And I think as we move through whatever iteration for however long we have these engines, that will continue to improve. But I get it. It's frustrating. I totally understand that part of it. You're not being overly negative. I feel the same way when I go, oh God, there's another. Here comes a stupid virtual safety car, and a driver just pulls off. Or yellow flag, and then you have to do the thing on the timing where I go, who is it? Who is it? Oh God, let it please not be Lando again. At least that's for me. But yeah, I totally get it. It is good to see Lewis Hamilton getting success again. I've told you, it's all been about 2026. So that's where we are. And now it's coming to fruition. So I always thought that was the case from the minute this thing was announced. So thank you, Mr. Formula. And don't worry, like I said, you're not being overly negative. You're watching what's there. And I get it. All right. We got one more contributor from John. Yes, that one. D. John, the founder that we all enjoy. Very easy comment here. Still we rise. Get in there, Lewis. I think we got to translate the get in there into Italian and see what that says. I would be horrible at it, so I'm not even going to try. But whatever the equivalent of get in there, Lewis. I don't know that they have a catchphrase for this one yet. In the Ferrari, I think that'll develop when he wins probably more than one. I also do think that he will win multiple races this year now, especially given the form of where the car is. If they can back this result up with another solid, if not a win, in Austria, to be coming to the British Grand Prix with Lewis anywhere in title contention, let's just say even if it's within 28 points, that would be really close. If he can get it within a race distance by the British Grand Prix, you know what that home crowd does for him. Then we can actually talk about maybe a driver's championship, which would be, I think, something that 3-4 rounds ago we didn't think was even possible. So for all of that, this is a good result, I think, for the sport overall. And for it's a good result for Ferrari. It's a great result for Lewis Hamilton. And obviously all the legions of fans that he has, I think we're nothing but happy with this result. All right. So thank you guys again for your contributions to the show. I do enjoy very much reacting and responding to all of it. So please keep the thoughts coming, would be what I would say. And if you want to, if you haven't ever contributed and want to do so, just shoot us a DM. I usually open it up right after the races end. Is usually the best time. I try to collect them throughout the rest of that day and then work them into the show here. So thank you all very, very much. All right. Before we head on out, I do want to hand out some awards, and we'll start with the rubbish. And what I'm putting in the rubbish bin is really nothing more than a frustration as an overall racing fan. And that is, why do we have to be in conflict with one of what is supposed to be the best weekends on the calendar? One of the good things that I had going for me during my long drive back home was I got to listen to a good 6 hours of the 24 Hours of Le Mans that was also going on this weekend. And I thought it sucked at the end that I had to there weren't enough screens on to basically watch both at the same time. I can either dedicate myself to watching Formula One races the way that I watch them, or I can watch the end of Le Mans. And in my world, F1 trumps Le Mans that little bit more. Nothing against sports car racing. I love it. I think sports car racing, Le Mans and the Daytona 24, and with what IMSA is doing, is in one of its golden ages. They're doing a lot of the things right. They've navigated the energy split stuff better than a lot of other places have done. A lot of other series, including Formula One, have done. And there's a lot to be enthusiastic about if you're a sports car fan. I don't want to choose, damn it. I want to watch my Formula One on a standalone weekend, and I want to watch the 24 Hours of Le Mans should be a standalone weekend. It's different than the conflict between the Indy 500 and Formula One. That's always kind of been there a little bit, even though I think the timing of it, they tried to do the thing with the timing and it just didn't work out. But it bothered me a lot that I had to try to choose between the end of a very long race that I was very vested in because I knew a lot of what was going on because I'd been following it in my car as I was driving home, versus my Formula One passion, which will always, just for me, it'll win out. But I don't like having the conflict. I'd rather really just be able to watch both, or have F1 be on its own weekend so that this doesn't get affected by it. So again, that's annoying for me. Fix the calendar, please, those who run the world. All right, so we'll move into analysis paralysis. And the only one I can really think of to give to is Mercedes, because I still wasn't sure if George's radio comment that, why do you switch me to the 3-stop, if that was just theatrics, or if he was legitimately pissed because he was trying to make those tires last longer. I would have wanted to have seen how that would have played out. And once you decide to cover Lewis off there and switch the strategy, you were basically coming down to a pace race. And in this case, you were lacking. Um, and I don't know that it's a full-on analysis paralysis here, but it's close enough. So I'm going to give this one to Mercedes. I was surprised that they covered off as early as they did. But I think they were drawn into that strategy by the pace, like I said before, that Lewis Hamilton had. All right, so for Dark Horse, I had to take away the Dark Horse from the law firm of Lindblad and Lawson because I said in my Monaco GP review that I'd give it back to Pierre Gasly if he won his appeal. I had to give it back to Pierre Gasly because he won his appeal, even though it created a mess. He's won his appeal, and that makes him the Dark Horse for Monaco. But here, I can now give this back to the law firm of Lindblad and Lawson in the Racing Bulls. A solid result for them. They get to keep this award this time, no matter what happens. Thought they did just a standard good job, and they benefited from some of the retirements along with a lot of other people. But hey, that's how that goes. You got to be there to fall on that ball when it's presented to you, and they did, and they were. Other than the Alpines, I think pretty good in the midfield there. And for driver of the day, this one is easy for me. That is clearly Lewis Hamilton. Showed up in the qualifying and was right on it. Was on the pace to legitimately win without the help of the virtual safety car in this race. I think he probably does win, or it comes very, very close to winning. And a virtuoso performance from the sport's one of the best. And he kind of is reminding everybody that he's not done. Never was done. And like I said in my headline, it's always been about 2026 in the Ferrari for him. So let's see if this is a harbinger of things to come. When he is confident, he is as dangerous as any other driver on the grid. And if I'm Timmy Antonelli, I am praying to God that I don't have another battery failure, because if he does and Lewis pounces, that's not a guy I want to see charging to get a world championship. Just say it. It's like Max Verstappen can be that guy too. I don't know that I want to get in Lewis Hamilton's way if he's on for potentially number 8. That's a tough thing for a 19-year-old. That would be a thing. So we will sit back and we will watch and we will find out what happens. All right. Well, that will do it for the Barcelona-Catalunya GP and this review. If you have stayed with us so long to get to this point, again, you are a wonderful human being. I thank you. You are awesome for doing so. We will actually try to do a preview show now that everyone is back in town. My travels are kind of done until the USGP probably in October. So I'll be around to definitely help out with some previews. We'll try to do an Austria GP preview. One thing that I want to talk about that I haven't had a chance to yet is I keep calling it the Ayúdame, which is Spanish for help me, but it's the Ayudo, or the engine token system, which apparently has anointed Red Bull is having the best engine. And somehow Mercedes get a development token, even though they've won all but one race in this year. Odd. And that is on appeal too. So another mess, but something we will definitely want to get into and catch up on some other news as well. So until then, stay safe out there. As the environment that I ran into when I got home from my excursion tells me, it's a crazy world out there. You don't know what's going to happen from day to day. Keep your friends close, your family closer, and be nice to each other, because it's just a weird world sometimes that can do some odd things. Stay safe, be kind to each other, and as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at OutlapF1 Podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com.